in 2021. That was a big year. 2021 is where I got pregnant with my daughter. After I had her, that's when I went to the dermatologist for my regular follow-up, and a couple spots were biopsied. I ended up having a basal cell on my forehead removed. I had a basal cell on my right arm removed. I had a melanoma spot on my chest, on my left breast. It was tiny. It was a, small little spot. 4 years later, what happened was that melanoma spot metastasized and it went to my lung. My immediate thought was, like, am I going to be able to see my daughters grow up? Is my husband going to have to raise them alone? My name is Jennifer. I'm 39 years old, and I was recently diagnosed with stage 4 metastatic melanoma on July 1st, actually, right before my 39th birthday. Back in April, this past April, I got the flu. And it was odd because I went to my family doctor and she's like, the flu in April, how does that happen? But I had the flu and I was treated for it. And months went by and I still had this persistent cough. I would have these coughing fits. I would wake up in the middle of the night, constantly coughing. I would wake up my husband, my daughter, and I was just like, what is going on? Why do I have this cough? So I kind of just took it up as maybe it's just like a long cough from the flu. So I ended up going to my family doctor and some tests were done. I didn't have the flu. I didn't have strep throat or anything like that. So we just chalked it up as maybe it's some seasonal allergies. So I left. I bought some Claritin and, I was hoping that that would resolve the issue. Well, time went on, still had the cough. And then at that point, I was starting to get some chest pain. So I was at a family barbecue and my aunt, who was also a melanoma survivor, she had said, Jen, I had a conversation with my dermatologist, and anytime that someone has melanoma or a history of melanoma, a lot of times they would recommend a chest x-ray. So she said, why don't you try get a chest x-ray and see what happens, just to rule out anything significant. So that was the end of June. July 1st, I called my doctor right away. I said, can I have a chest x-ray, please? Let's find out what this problem is. Why do I still have this cough? That was July 1st. Shortly, it was the next day, she had given me a call and she said that the x-ray came back and it was abnormal and that she wanted to order a CT scan. So right away I was like kind of freaking out. Next day, fortunately, I was able to get in for a CAT scan. At that point, she brought me right into the office. That's when she said that the mass was found. It was very large already. It was actually measuring at 11.4 centimeters. So I was like, how did that happen? How did that grow inside of me for a lot of time and I didn't know it? So shortly after that, everything happened so quickly. So we had the x-ray first. Next day was the CAT scan. And then from there on, it was just, okay, we're referring you to MD Anderson for treatment. You have an appointment next Tuesday. You're going to go in for a consult, and then they're going to basically take over. I was definitely tired. I was more tired than usual. My daughter had just finished school at that point, and I just felt tired. From looking back, it was her first year of preschool, so I felt tired. She was in school. I had my little one at home, and I would get in this routine where my husband would come home and I'd be on the couch watching TV. So I wasn't getting out as I normally do. So looking back, I feel like I should have probably. I'm always on the go. I'm go go go, always outside. I took my daughter, my first daughter, out shopping and just out for walks and things like that. And with my second daughter, I just felt really tired, and I kind of just chalked it up as I'm just a tired mom. I didn't think anything of it. But now looking back, I'm like, I should have known that my body was telling me that maybe something was going on. Aside from the cough, I did have slight chest pain, like around my heart. And that kind of came like a little bit later, but it wasn't normal. And now that I look back, I'm like, that was a sign that something was wrong. So I wish I would have, done things differently, but I can't think that way because what's done is done at this point. Right away, you just think like, how long do I have? You have to stay off Google because when you go on Google, you read the worst. And immediately I just thought, I don't have much time left. my immediate thought was, like, am I going to be able to see my daughters grow up? Is my husband going to have to raise them alone? So initially that was the most scariest part, just trying to navigate the feelings of what their future is going to look like without me. I'm going back to the doctors because they were just there's such a great team of doctors. They just, they give you options, and it kind of makes things a little bit easier, to know that you have options, the different treatment plans, and you try to read like success stories about, the different the different medications and what's available to you. The team of doctors there have been nothing short of amazing. I mean, I really am blessed. Um, right away, they did MRI of the brain. They did the PET scan. Um, Fortunately, the MRI of the brain did come back clear, but the PET scan basically revealed what they already had seen in the CAT scan, that the melanoma had metastasized to my lung, and that it was basically just a huge mass taking over my whole entire left lung. The thoracic surgeon that I met with, I can't say enough good things about him. So aggressive, but in a good way, not pushy. Smart, just really brilliant. They all had a plan. The oncologist, there was a team of doctors, the pulmonologists. They had this plan, and they executed, very quickly. After those big tests were done, it was decided that I was going to go through with immunotherapy. So I had my first round of immunotherapy on July 28th. So as you can see, only a couple weeks had gone by from the time that I had the x-ray, and then by the 28th, I was doing the immunotherapy. I had my first round, and that following day, a nurse had called and asked how I was doing, and I was like really out of breath. I was having a hard time speaking, and she's like, "You don't sound too good." And I said, "Yeah, I was trying to take a nap, and I'm having a hard time breathing." And she actually advised me to go to the emergency room. So I did, and my heart rate was very high. They saw that something just wasn't right. So there was a couple different plans. They were going to do a couple different procedures to maybe open up my airway a little bit more. I had I think it's a thoracentesis to remove some fluid in my back, and there was no relief with any of that. So my doctor that Friday had come into my hospital room, and he said, "We have to get this thing out." He said, "We can't wait any longer." The intended plan was to go through with the immunotherapy to shrink it because it was just such a large tumor. They didn't want to go in right away because it was like sitting on my diaphragm. It was intertwined with nerves, important nerves that they didn't want to have to interrupt. So the plan was to go through the immunotherapy and then get some scans done and see if it shrunk, and then at that point remove it. But because I ended up in the emergency, and because my heart rate was just so high and they couldn't bring it down, they decided that they had to go in to remove it. So my doctor, when he came in, the thoracic surgeon, he said, if you have this surgery, he said, it's a very hard surgery. It's very complex. It's a huge tumor. There's a 10% chance that you might not make this surgery. And that's a very high number for surgery. They said, we don't like to see 10%. But he said, if we don't do the surgery, there's a 100% chance that you may not make it 2 more days. So at that point, obviously, I said, well, let's do it. Let's remove it. So I had to call my husband, call my mom and my dad, and tell them there's a change of plans. We have to have surgery, and they want to do it like tonight. My husband, he's very stoic, so he'll put on this like strong front and pretend that everything's fine. But I know that it was hard for him, just because, again, a life without the girl's mother, like, who wants to think like that? But that's where we went. That's where my mind went, and he saw how upset I was. But he was just so supportive, and I'm so grateful for him. I felt like during this past month and a half, I've cried a lot. I'm super emotional about the whole situation, and he just kind of lets me cry, tells me it's going to be okay, and pushes me to be positive. Anytime my mind goes to that dark place, he kind of brings me back and just tells me, we're going to be okay. We're going to fight this. We're going to beat it. You're going to be here for a very long time. So I'm grateful for his mindset. But yeah, it's hard not to go to a dark place. They took out the whole lung. It was actually like creeping up to my heart. So they actually had to take the outer layer of the heart, which is called, I think, the pericardium. They had to remove that. Just because, again, it was getting so far up there. And that's why it turns out that that's why my breathing was so bad, is because it was aggressively moving to my heart. That's why they had to go in so quickly to remove the lung and the tumor. But once they got it all, I was told that my margins are clear, which is excellent. But there's always that chance that there could be small cancer cells, fluids in there. So of course, there's always a chance that it could come back. So that's, I think, the hardest part, is just being fearful of the future. Like my next PET scan, what'll happen is every 3 months I'll get PET scans just to, monitor. And it's going to be scary every time I have to go in, because you're just, you're fearful of that returning. But I'll continue with the immunotherapy, I believe, for up to a year for like preventative purposes. And I'm all for that. I'll do whatever I have to do to make sure that this doesn't come back. Before the surgery, the nurses and doctors come in and they tell you about all the risks of the surgery. And there's so many. I mean, there's just so many things could have gone wrong. Fortunately, they didn't. But when they were inside, the tumor had just wrapped itself not only around the lung, but again, the nerves, all kinds of veins, I guess. It was just intertwined. So one of the risks was, they told me that they would have to, if it came down to it, if they had to cut a certain, whether it's an artery or a vein or a nerve, they may have to cut it. So after the surgery, when I woke up and I tried to talk, of course, I was very raspy, and that's understandable because they had the tubes down my throat. But the doctor did let me know that, unfortunately, because the left vocal cord nerve was wrapped around the tumor, they did have to sacrifice it. So he informed me that the left nerve was cut, but that the right nerve was still fine. So basically, my voice actually sounds a lot better. It was really raspy and really low for the first couple weeks. But what's going to happen is, because that left vocal cord is now paralyzed, I do have the option to, there's actually several options. I can get an injection in my nerve of the vocal cord, and that will plump it up so the right one doesn't have to do all the work. And that could temporarily give me my voice back. For a more permanent option, there's 2 surgeries that I could go through that I'm kind of researching and considering what I think is best. It involves either inserting an implant behind the vocal cord, or wrapping a good nerve around the bad nerve and moving my voice box. So I don't know if I want to go through that right now. I'm going to try just the injection, the temporary fix, and see how that goes. And then maybe down the road, I'll consider one of the 2 surgeries to hopefully restore my voice. I mentioned before that I've always been like a go, go, go person. I'm very type A. I like to do everything myself. I'm very independent. If I can do something myself, I'm going to do it and not rely on someone else to do it for me. So I've just had to really shift my mind and lean on others. I'm grateful I have a wonderful support system. I mentioned that I'm an only child, but my husband is one of 6, and he has a huge family. So he's one of 6, and his mom was actually one of 11, and his dad is one of 6. So there's just tons of aunts and uncles and cousins, and his siblings have just been so wonderful. They did like a meal train. So like they prepared meals for us. They've sent gift cards. They've came and watched our girls for us, babysat for us, gave them baths when I wasn't here to do it for them. So just turning my mindset, leaning on others and letting them help. It's been a challenge, but I'm doing it because they're there and they want to help. So I'm so grateful for that. I couldn't ask for a better support system. Fortunately, I'm now kind of getting back in the swing of things. Getting outside more. The weather's getting cooler. I can breathe again. So it's nice to be able to start doing those things again that I used to do. It's only been a few weeks though, but I'm getting around, and every day I'm getting stronger. Back in 2021, that was a big year. 2021 is where I got pregnant with my daughter. But after I had her, that's when I went to the dermatologist for my regular follow-up, and a couple spots were biopsied. I ended up having a basal cell on my forehead removed. I had a basal cell on my right arm removed. That was done right in the office. And then I had to go actually to Cooper Hospital. I had a melanoma spot on my chest, on my left breast. It was tiny. It was a, small little spot, but what had happened was if I scratched it by accident or like getting out of the shower, it would start to bleed. And obviously, the doctor said if a mole is bleeding or if it's itchy, then that's a sign that something probably isn't right. So sure enough, that spot ended up being melanoma. Once they removed the melanoma, I went for the follow-up with that, and all margins were clear. They did the genetic testing with that one as well. And after that, that was it. That was in 2021. So I continued with my regular follow-up with my dermatologist every 6 months, and then it went to a year. So now, at that point, it was annual visits with my dermatologist. But nothing since then had come up. So 4 years later, what happened was that melanoma spot metastasized and it went to my lung. Not only does melanoma run on my dad's side, so it's my dad's sister who advised me to get the chest x-ray. It also runs on my mom's side. So my mom has had melanoma, my aunt has had melanoma on my mom's side, and then my other aunt and my grandfather. So it's something that does run in our family. But the odd thing is, I had like the genetic testing done because I was so worried about my daughters and whether or not this could carry on to them. And there was a ton of mutations within the tumor when it was tested, but genetically speaking, they said that it's unlikely something that I could pass on to them. Of course, there are concerns. They have to be, protected in the sun. They're light skinned. And of course, we're going to take the necessary precautions for them. But genetically speaking, it doesn't sound like that's where it came from. I spent years, my teens, early 20s, up until probably my early 30s, not really protecting myself in the sun, laying out baby oil, tanning salons back in high school for prom. And I look back and I wish so much that I knew the effects of, the sun damage, UV rays and all of that. I wish I had known, but I can change the past. But as soon as I found out back in 2021 that those spots were skin cancer, that changed everything. From then forward, I've never laid out in the sun. I make sure that when I go out, I wear a hat. Sunblock always. And same for my girls. I load them up with sunblock every time they go outside. So just, taking the necessary steps going forward is all I can do. Wearing those sun protecting shirts, they're not very flattering, but at least I'm covered. But again, we don't really, we go outside, but we try to do things like a lot of indoor activities. Again, just enjoy the colder months. I would say don't let the diagnosis scare you too much. Obviously, when you hear the news that you have cancer, it's very scary. But just try to, focus on the fact that that you have it now and it can be addressed. Focus on just the future. In that, I don't want to say focus on the future because you really want to take it one day at a time. And I know that's, easier said than done. But if you want to be here and you want to live a long life, then hope for that and pray for that and wish for that. I one day at a time, but I also like to plan. I like to plan fun trips for the future because I want to think that I'm still going to be here, So I just don't let the cancer diagnosis define who you are. Be grateful that it's there and do what you can to get yourself healthy again.